and welcome to the Athlone Castle cooking show. Today we are going to show a feast that would be eaten by Lord John de Grey as he comes to visit the castle and look upon the building works. I am Susannah of York and I am dressed as a Norman, and I would have been one of his staff. And that staff, I would be responsible for his herbs and spices. The herbs and spices you see growing, the herbs you see growing here, the spices would have been imported from the Far East and the Middle East, and they would have been very, very expensive. So I carry the key to the spice box. And I'd just like to tell you a little bit about the Anglo-Normans, as we would be called, tended to eat yeast bread, or a bread that was baked in a bread oven. They had bread ovens and they made them to bake the wheaten bread and lesser breads in the castle and in urban areas. But they might not at this time have had a bread oven, so they would have to go over to the monastery near them and ask to use their bread oven. So also we are going to show griddle cakes, which would have been used by the lower classes and the soldiers that lived in Athlone Castle. There's a sense of elitism, or showing that you are wealthy, by using these spices, fruits both fresh and dried, and new herbs. Between trade, stories, recordings of laws, and farming procedures, the building of castles and the defense of import trade, we can build a picture of Norman life in Athlone Castle. And now I would like to introduce you to our cook for today.
Hello, my name is Lady Maebh Róis, and welcome to my garden. Today we're going to cook Anglo-Norman food. As you see, we have a fire set up with all the different pots that were used at that time. So we have gridirons that will dry cook your salmon, your big fish, your flatbreads, oat cakes, anything that actually needs frying in butter, and our lard or dripping. Also, we have our big pot. These pots come in very handy for pottage, cooking chicken, making your bread, stews, porridge, whatever has a wet ingredient in it, the pot was used. Now, anybody can cook Anglo-Norman in the backyard, but a little reminder just to be safe and keep your bucket of sand, which I have, and some water in case it goes astray in this really hot weather. But enjoy your cooking from Athlone Castle and from the Midlands of Ireland. We're having a feast tonight. So if we're having a feast, we have to do a little bit of cooking. And we're going to start with the gridirons and see what we're going to cook there. So the first thing we're going to do is our salmon. So the salmon runs beside Athlone Castle itself, and also you can get trout and eel. So it is a firm favourite of the Irish, and the Anglo-Norman really appreciate our lovely salmon that flow up with the river. So for this recipe we have our salmon with skin side. We're going to drizzle a little bit of honey. They've kind of got into the habit of having it the Irish way, which is a little bit of honey. And the monastery down the road has lovely honey because it keeps its bees. And on this we're going to sprinkle a little bit of salt. Now salt was kind of coarse because it came in blocks usually. It isn't a fine salt that we know of today. So we're going to sprinkle our salt on. And the Anglo-Normans had an absolutely love of pepper. You will see it as we go along. So we'll have a little sprinkle of pepper. Just remember, whatever you like yourself, a little bit of pepper. So on goes the salmon. I hope you can hear the sizzle. So if you were a soldier or lived around a town in Athlone, oatcakes was a firm favourite. So very simple to make. So all you need is 2 handfuls of flour, a handful of whole wheat flour, a small little bit of salt, and some liquid. Whether you have whey, milk, or water, whatever you like yourself. These ones now have water in them, so we'll put these on the pan as well. So oatcakes have been cooked like this for absolute centuries, or sometimes they're just placed on the flagstone or a hot part of the fire and allowed dry next to the heat. So we'll leave them to sit there a little while. The next thing is a sweet fritter or pancake. Now the Anglo-Normans love their herbs and their spices. So today we're going to use a little bit of fennel because it's quite sweet. So we just sauteed the fennel in a little bit of butter, and then we added some flour and milk and eggs. Very simple. Everybody knows how to make a pancake. So we're just going to add a little bit to this gridiron and hope it doesn't flow all over the place. And we shall wait and see what happens. We shall give it a little time to cook. And that's it for now. We will move on to our chicken in a few minutes. Now I have the wine and I have our spices. I have cinnamon and I have 2 different types of peppers. The Normans loved their spices and they loved their wine and they loved to show it off because that meant that they had money and that they were rich and that they were powerful. So today we're going to take the Warden pears, our pears. Pears were brought into Ireland by the Normans, the Anglo-Normans, and so we're going to cook some pears in wine and spices. How simple is that? A most gorgeous dessert. Now, desserts weren't really a thing. Everything was kind of served together because of the sweet and the sour of the food and how it worked cooked in the 12th century. But nevertheless, so we peeled our pears and we left on the stems, and we're just going to pour in a little drop of wine just to fill it up a little bit further, and then I'm just going to sprinkle in my spices. So a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of pepper. Now they use ginger, cardamom, and many more spices, but just for today that's what I like to eat. So we'll just put that over there. So we put our spices away and we'll put our wine away. Next, the Normans brought many foods to Ireland. They bought the rabbit and they bought the popularity of having chicken for dinner, and the pheasant and the deer. So we have a lot to thank the Anglo-Normans for. Our first deer parks were brought to Ireland by the Anglo-Normans. So today, because we're going to make a popular dish, we're going to make a chicken. So there's a little bit of prep in this. So I'm going to fill the cavity with some onion. Some butter with wild garlic. It was a nice way of keeping it inside, just to add a little bit of taste and flavour. And yes, food in Ireland tasted very garlicky. The butter tasted garlicky, and the and a lot of the pottages, because fresh garlic, wild garlic was added to the pottages. So the Anglo-Normans came to live in Ireland. So a little bit of Anglo-Norman cooking and a little bit of Ireland cooking. So into the pot we go. I am keeping the flour to mix with salt and pepper later and put it on when it is nearly cooked. This will take a couple of hours, so I must go and prepare other foods for the feast to see.
Welcome back. Now we come to the best part of the film, and that is the eating part. I have set the table up here as if it would have been set for Lord John de Grey. Now he would have travelled with his own plate, and he would have his pewter or possibly silver, and he would have a bowl for the wet, and he would have his wine glass, and he would have his goblet for possible beer. So here on the table we have some of the delicious things that have been cooked. There is the chicken. Here are the oatcakes, ready to be eaten. And here is the pork. Now, we didn't show the pork, but pork, the Normans made pork very, very popular. And here it is cooked with what are called worts or greens. And it has a mixture of leek and cabbage. And they were very popular. And here we, of course, have the salmon. We have our pepper and our salt. And here we have a very small glass that would show that he was very rich, that he would be able to afford Venetian glass. And this is small and possibly would contain some kind of a liqueur that, or mead even, because mead was very popular also with the Irish, and it would be available. So that would be what Lord John Grey would have, but the poor soldiers that worked in Athlone Castle, they would have had a wooden bowl and a ceramic mug, and they would have eaten everything out of these containers. Now, often people say, well, how did they eat? Did they eat with their fingers? Well, no, they would have had a spoon, and you would eat a lot of the wet things with the spoon. For the pork and the chicken, he would have had his eating knife and his pricker. Now, this is a double pricker, which came in a little bit later than the time we are talking about, but it is not a fork yet. So he would cut the meat with his knife, and he would put his pricker in, and he would hold it and eat it. And also he would eat with his fingers. And at the end of the meal, he would be presented with a basin and a towel, and he would wash his hands. So he wouldn't really, put his hand under the table and wipe it on the wolfhound under the table. So we're getting now to the really good part, because we get to eat all the food. So, bon appetit, everyone. Hi, my name is Sue Callaghan.
And I'm Geraldine Clarke.
And we're sitting here in Geraldine's beautiful herb garden, ready to partake of all this wonderful food that was cooked today. We would like to thank Ger for the use of her garden, and we would also like to thank the Heritage Council, and we would also like to thank Athlone Castle for asking us to do this, because it's been a great journey in learning about Anglo-Norman food. We're sitting in this herb garden, and there's a little quiz. If you can name and recognize the herbs in this garden, and tell me how many of them are actually edible. The answer will be at the end of the recipes attached to this video. So, if you'd like any more information about the Society for Creative Anachronism, there will be an email address or a website on the end also of this. So thank you, everybody, and here we are. So
sláinte.